Good evening and good afternoon, or actually good morning, depending where you are in the world. And welcome to our webinar. It's a joint webinar for GeoEdge and WhizzCo, and it's the final stage of long happening collaboration between the companies, including an ebook discussing how to manage ad quality in content recommendation. With us today are two wonderful panelists, Amnon Siev, the CEO of GeoEdge, and Alon Rosenthal, the CEO of WhizzCo. Hi, Alon. Hi, Amnon.
Michal.
Hi. Hello, everyone.
Great to have you here. I'm Michal Niesenson, and I'm going to be the moderator for today's discussion. We're going to talk today about a bunch of very interesting things. We're going to talk about how we define ad quality, what are the unique challenges of ad quality when it comes to content recommendations, the importance of ad quality, and what are the end results for publishers, and what can we do in order to raise the on-site engagement with content ads and not have to sacrifice your revenue for quality, or vice versa. So without further ado, let's start. Oh, before we begin, some housekeeping. If you have any questions, please feel free to type them either in the chat area or in the Q&A. We will have time for questions and answers at the end of the session. If you would like to direct your question to one of our CEOs today, please specify if it's Alon or Amnon, and let's begin. So before we start, how we define ad quality? Amnon.
Thank you, Michal, and great to be here. So when we talk about ad quality, I like to start with a very general definition. When there is a gap between the user expectations and the content of the ads, then we are talking about gap in ad quality. So from our perspective, we are always trying to get into the eyes of the reader and ask ourselves what will be considered an ad that they will feel comfortable to see, when they will feel comfortable to click on the ad and get to the landing page and will not be surprised. That's a very, very general definition. And when we get, a bit into more specifics, then we are talking about cases in which the ad basically breach the unwritten contract between the reader and the website. So it could be offensive content, it could be different kind of frauds, it could be an ad that misleads the user to make an interaction. And all these things are basically fall into the category of ad quality.
I'll say a sentence about that as well. I think that from our perspective, of a publisher perspective, is how does my website look like? Is it quality enough for the user, or how my page look like? What will the experience that the user will have? So that's the way I would define the quality, the ad quality.
When it comes to primary ad quality concerns, there are few areas where we look at problematic ads that tarnish the quality of the user experience. Amnon, could you kindly elaborate a little more?
Yeah, so I mean, I would like, actually, to use this slide as a guideline. So we're talking about safe, engaging, and a clean user experience. When we're talking about safe, we're talking about interaction with the campaign, with the advertiser that can actually, jeopardize the safety of the user. So basically, any kind of malicious behavior, any kind of fraud, any kind of interaction that eventually can steal the user private information and credential, all these fall into the category of safe, of malicious content. So that's one category. The second one is about a clean experience. So low quality ads could be ads that you don't want that your audience will see. So we mentioned offensive content. We can talk about specific vertical. We can talk about ads that from a graphic perspective basically create a bad experience or a bad reaction from the user. And the last one is about the poor user experience. And this is again very vague, but I think each one of us know when he has an interaction with an ad that create a bad user experience. So for example, if you are clicking on an ad that is a clickbait, and when you get to the landing page, you basically realize that you were lured into making an interaction with the campaign without any getting real value, that essentially will fall under the category of a poor user experience and so on.
I think overall the experience of the user, like I said, I think in the prior slide, but I agree with everything Amnon said. The primary ad quality concerns are, from a user point of view, what will happen to me next? Where will I go to? Or what the information, personal information I will lose? And how will this journey of surfing the web would take me to? Would it be to anything dangerous? Would it be to anything that will connect with me in my aftermath, like my personal details or others? So yeah, I completely agree.
And when we talk about ad quality, we understand the different problems that stems from poor ad quality, but why is it so important for publishers? Because other than saying, we value quality, there are actual tangibles that are on the line. So why is it so important?
Alon, do you want to start? Do you want me to start?
I think it's mostly important.
I want my boss.
Go ahead.
No, okay. There are many motivations from, first of all, when we talk about the ad quality, why it's important, I want to start, with a very, general statement that essentially we are, as an industry that basically make revenue and money from user experience, from user engagement in content. We have a responsibility to have a high experience for the user, which translate to high quality of content and high quality of ad. Taking it one notch down, we can talk about different implication. Okay, so let's start with the obvious one, which is basically revenue. So poor ad quality essentially have implication on the session time, on the retention, on the loyalty of the user to the website and to the brand. And there is a direct correlation between the quality of ad that actually a publisher run of the ad and eventually the quality. Other motivation are related, to your brand equity. So that's a more long strategy. So essentially, when people are going to a website, okay, they expecting for a certain level of experience, certain experience regarding the content and certain experience regarding the quality. If this equation is being broken, this unwritten contract is being broken, essentially you create a bad relationship between the user and the website, which will break, which will harm the brand in the long run. And the final category is about regulation. So the best example, think about, for those of you that are familiar with COPPA, the regulation that actually mandate which kind of ad can be shown to a certain kind of audience. It could be state regulation. It could be also app store regulation and other company regulations. So revenue, brands, and also different regulation and policy that the regulation mandate.
I also think that a part of the quality is so important because in many cases the user doesn't know how to, what's the ad and what's the content.
Right.
When a user comes to a website, he gets the entire experience, and a part of that experience, what the user feels is that the publisher, the website, owns the ads, right? Like most people are not coming like us, like the people on this call, from the ad tech. So there is minimum understanding, right, for a user, the things that the ad is a part of the overall experience.
And we're talking a lot about ad quality, but actually the quality doesn't refer only to the ad itself. It's the ad and what comes beyond the ad. So in a joint survey, we went and asked publishers, what do they think of different aspects of ad quality? And one of the interesting parts is that they do not think that the ad quality begin and end with the ad. We see that almost actually 81% sees the landing page as part of the quality journey when it comes to ad quality.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, essentially, when we're talking about ad quality, we're talking about the holistic experience, which include the creative, how the creative behave on the page, and what happened after the user interact with the ad itself. From the user perspective, if they are coming to a website and essentially interact with an ad, and they will have a bad experience in the landing page, they will associate that with the publisher. From their perspective, the publisher, was the gate to that bad experience.
The owner of the domain. He's the owner of this domain, the owner of the entire experience. Sorry for jumping in.
It's okay. As long as you have something smart to say, we approve it.
I'm trying.
If we're looking at it, I mean, there's also kind of a dilemma of who's responsible for the ad quality. So when we're talking about advertisers, it's actually not just the clean advertiser, it could be the malicious advertiser. And we see that almost 20% say the advertisers, while actually the publisher and the content recommendation vendor are mostly held accountable here. Alon, what do you think about that?
I think that actually what we see here, the answers of this question is actually comes from, I think that most of the people that answer this survey, most likely, right? They understand the question, but they don't know the entire truth behind it. And again, I think this responsibility issue is every part of this ecosystem, of the ethic ecosystem, has a small part of this responsibility. Obviously, if it's a malicious advertiser or a marketer that drives malicious campaigns, he's the responsible for that. But other than that, I think there is lots of responsibility for the vendor that's supposed to that obviously approve, that monitor, that tracks all of those campaigns and know the exact content that's being distributed through his platform. And obviously the publisher, I mean, I can say that the answer here quite surprises me, because most people would imagine that the publisher is responsible, even though if you think about it, it's very difficult for a publisher to keep track or to monitor, right, like millions of pages or much more, and to track each ad that's being displayed on his domain. So I would say that I think the responsibility is a part, in every step of the way. Every player in this ecosystem should take his responsibility for at least part of it.
Michali, if I may add one more sentence. I think, the word responsibility, I think it's a bit, in a way, it might be a bit misleading. I think what these statistics are showing, and these are basically, a survey that we run with, with publishers. So essentially, I think at the end of the day, from the user perspective and the publisher perspective, of course, it's the publisher responsibility to make sure that there is high quality content. But I think what publishers are basically saying, and that may be a bit wishful thinking, that they say, okay, ideally, we would like to live in a world that when we work with the content recommendation vendor, they will imply the necessary measurement in order to ensure that only high quality campaigns are being delivered. And we don't want to bear the cost, the financial cost or the operational cost, to actually be the one that are doing that. But like any domain in business, essentially, if you want to assure a certain bar of quality, publishers that actually do care about that essentially need to take their own measurement, because unfortunately, as we see many times, not all content recommendation vendors are taking, the right measurement and not necessarily bring the level of perfection and quality that some publishers expect.
Thank you.
I do want to add one more one little thing to that as well. I think that where we will be in a few years is that publishers would be much more responsible using technologies, all sorts of platforms that will allow them to monitor every single ad that's running on their domain. It would be, I think that's where the industry will go to. Obviously, vendors, content recommendation vendors are responsible right now. That's what I think. But the responsibility will lean towards the publishers, because in the end of the day, it's their asset. and it's basically what they approve, which advertiser or network or vendor they approve to be displayed on their assets.
Thank you, Alon. You know, before we proceed and we discuss a little bit of the things that publishers are doing nowadays to increase the site engagement, I think it's important that you share with us a little bit about your companies and what is it that you do for publishers. So, Amnon, would you like to start with GeoEdge and how we help publishers provide better user experience?
Yeah, so I think, this slide is actually, the right place to talk about it. So we actually, we are working both with the publisher as well with the content recommendation vendors to assure the quality. So publishers that actually, see that it's their own responsibility can basically deploy our solution in order to get this level of quality, in order to monitor all the different impressions, as well as the vendor. So essentially, we are providing the technology to enforce the policy that the publisher is looking to enforce.
Alon, what is it that WhizzCo does for publishers?
Sure. In a nutshell, we help publisher maximize their content recommendation revenue by allowing them to work with multiple content recommendation vendors, which basically didn't exist until recently, until we started WhizzCo. We help them to optimize their revenue, to monitor all of their content recommendation vendors and their performance in a unified dashboard. And we are actually taking a part of the quality monitoring as well, helping them, take the native advertising or the content recommendation vertical into a better place where there is more demand, meaning less harmful content for the user, and obviously maximizing revenue for publishers.
Thank you, Alon. So publishers are going into many creative ways to increase the ability to have more appealing content for users and for advertisers. So what are some of the things that they do in order to restructure the content to make it more appealing? Alon, would you like to share a little bit?
Sure. From the publishers we've been working with, and this is something I hear a lot. Many publishers are trying to satisfy, which is, it is okay, trying to satisfy advertisers or vendors, all sorts of ad tech companies, to get better advertisers to work on their pages. So, I mean, if I'm looking at this question and the answer, if I see the percentage, I think that change the layout of a web page is probably the most common one. I can tell, I mean, when a publisher comes to a vendor or to any content recommendation vendor, so there are changes that need to be made. If it's adding more content, changing the layout, make the layout work, maybe to maximize revenues or maybe to maximize UX purposes or whatever. So I would say that most publishers would have to take some kind of steps to make their sites more appealing for advertisers or certain networks. I think probably changing that out or making some editorial policy changes would be the biggest ones.
And it's all about the engagement, right? So what kind of tools can they use to increase the engagement of the users?
Right, so in terms of, I mean, here we can see that recirculate is obviously the biggest thing. I can say that this call is for a publisher, this webinar is for publishers. So obviously doing kind of a mixture, right, of your actual content, of your real content of the site, like recirculating it with a blend of ads would probably do the trick, would probably will bring this increase of engagement. We need to keep reminding ourselves as edtech people that users, again, like we said a few slides before, users are not always, users cannot, cannot know what's the difference between ads and the actual content of the site. And that's a great spot to recirculate your content and make the user, get the real experience of the actual site and not just bombing him with ads. So I would say that recirculating the actual content of the site would probably be the best way, obviously with ads that can make you obviously get revenue.
Thank you. So the Rolling Stones once say that you can't always get what you want. And that's a problem always in life, that you can't eat your cake and have it too. So many times we see that publishers are willing to forego revenue in order to attract higher quality advertisers. But the question is, and that's a question for you first, Amnon, can you eat your cake and have it too when it comes to ad quality?
Essentially, from one hand, I'm very happy to see the results here because it shows, it demonstrates, the commitment of some of the publishers, toward that quality. But on the other hand, we claim that it shouldn't be a trade-off, right? It might be a short-term trade-off, meaning that if you are taking proactive measurement in order to increase the quality of your ad, you might have some short-term price to pay regarding the revenue that you are making. But essentially, again, if you're creating a site that is more engaging and the experience is better, you will attract more audience, you will attract more premium advertisers that want to, to engage with the premium video that's on your website. And that will essentially will benefit you. And even more than that, today with technology like we offer and other vendors in the ad quality, you don't necessarily need to make this compromise. Meaning you can be more reluctant to enjoy with all the revenue opportunities that programmatic brings on native, and work with other platforms. But on the other hand, have a very tight control on the quality. So I think we live in an area that publishers that are, that willing, to make, the move toward using an ad quality technology, they can actually enjoy both worlds.
So the results of, just one second, the results of the survey are quite astonishing. Almost 60%, or exactly 60% of publishers, more than half, are willing to forgo some of the revenue. But Alon, can they have it all? Is it possible?
I think, first of all, I completely agree with what Amnon said. I think it's a long-term investment, right? So, I mean, it's kind of, as edtech people, we can say, it's kind of like bringing in a new vendor, and there's it takes time for the optimization to kick in. That's something that we're all familiar with. When a new technology comes in, it takes time until it learns the traffic or the users and how fast and things. It takes quite of time until things start to kick in. So I'm looking at this slide. First of all, 60%, I think it's a phenomenal number because it means that publishers, I think if we would ask this question a few years ago, it would probably be half of that. I think that it's a great progress for the industry, for the publishing industry. And it's a long-term investment for me, it's a great, it's great data to look at because, publishers basically are, what is a publisher? Publisher is a business. It's to be an owner of a business, and there's nothing in the world that the business owner wants than to retain his users, to retain his clients. And I think it's a phenomenal number, and I'm happy to see it. Obviously, I took a look at it before, and I'm happy to see it. And I think that if we'll ask this question in a year, it would probably be 70%. And I think it's a great step forward.
So if we're talking about the future of ad quality, I know you're both CEOs and not fortune tellers, but can you share a little bit with us from your perspective, where is the future here? So what can we expect?
I think there are good news and bad news, okay? I think, the good news is that there is much more awareness and much more technology and much more tools for company, businesses, vendors, publishers that are committed toward ad quality to basically get today and imply a very high standard. So it's not a problem that, that again, from the technology domain, it's not solvable, okay? Of course, there is investment to be made, but having said that, I think it's a problem that can be tackled. And the bad news is that the malicious players become much more sophisticated. And especially, I want to reiterate the point that Alon mentioned. as there is more gray area between content and advertiser, which in a way, this is something that we as an industry actually, encourage, because that's in a way, help publisher making more money. Malicious actors now leverage that in order to lure the user to interact with content or some kind of ad in order to bring into some kind of a scam, and we see more and more like that. So as I said, the good news, it can be solvable, but having said that, the trend, there is more and more malicious activity that happen today through advertisement, and specifically in native as well.
I couldn't agree more. Again, I think that the future of content recommendation is relatively still a small industry, a small vertical in the ad tech. So far, in the past few years, malicious marketers enjoyed spreading malicious campaigns, bad ads, and basically trying to destroy the small blooming vertical. I think that the future is, first of all, this industry, the content recommendation, is going to grow in terms of budgets. More brands will come in, agencies, marketers that would bring much more quality demand. And I think the future is, first of all, for a publisher to work with multiple vendors, and opening themselves to work with multiple vendors will bring them the flexibility, the possibility to cut a vendor when they need to, or to stop a certain campaigns, and to really work. Once there is more demand, there is more quality. So there is less room for it. That's one. And I'll try a few more sentences. I'll be brief. I know we're on a short time. Second of all, I think that publishers are starting to understand that content recommendation is a significant revenue out of their overall revenue, and there's no room to say, okay, in display or video, I'll be very strict, and on the content recommendation, I'll go with the flow like it is. There is no room for it, because content recommendation is a part of the overall experience of the user, and the user remembers everything. The user remembers what he clicked on, and where did he continue. So I think that, to summarize that, quality should be, I think, the next big thing of content recommendation, using companies like you guys or any other companies, because other than that, this vertical of content recommendation can go only to terrible places without being able to monitor, to keep track, and malicious campaigns will always be there, but trying to minimize it to the corner, to very small type of marketers that not let them to be free as they are.
Thank you. Amnon, any few more final words before we close this webinar?
Yeah, so I mean, I think essentially, each publisher, can decide where they are on the spectrum, how much they're willing to invest into ad quality. I can, compliment Alon, that that they are, as a relatively new player, in the native market, actually, take the ad quality flag and put it, full steam forward. I can say that from our perspective, unfortunately, as I say, we do see a lot of quality issues, especially in native, and I think there is, a huge opportunity for us as an industry to make an impact in that space.
Thank you so much. If any of our participants or attendees would like to ask a question, you have 10 seconds to ask the question before we call it a day. So let's see if anyone has any interesting questions to ask.
Meanwhile, Michal, I'll say one more sentence while people will write their question or not. I'm speaking to the publishers. Again, it's a publishers webinar, so I'm speaking to the publishers that we have here on the line to take a stand, to take this forward. There's no room for this type of ads on the internet. We all have children, we all have families, and they're important for us. Nobody likes to be scammed. Nobody likes for his children to be exposed to to certain content. I won't say what type of content, but certain content. And I think that's exactly the time for content recommendation, for publishers monetizing with content recommendation, to take this forward and start using technologies and start blocking those type of ads.
Thank you. One of our attendees, OR, is asking a question. Feel free to answer this one, Alon. Do you think that quality risks the entire content recommendations domain?
To be honest, I do, because the content recommendation is still, like I said a few minutes ago, is still small. It's only a few of billions of dollars. So if you compare it to other verticals, it's basically nothing. And it is a growing industry, and you can feel the quality pouring in. But I truly feel that something needs to be changed, because if not, it's a true risk for the industry. Probably not for the big players in the industry, but for the entire industry as an industry for marketers and for marketers to distribute their campaigns and for publishers to be able to monetize their content. I think it is a risk.
If I may, Michal, essentially, when we're talking about native and content recommendation, we need to understand that the biggest risk happen when, eventually the landing page is being hosted by the advertiser, right? And all, when new advertisers get into this space, they're providing, a landing page. The challenge is that even if you try to check this landing page, there are different clocking technique and different mechanism to evade detection. And what we see, and and all the people that dealing with that quality, these mechanisms become more and more sophisticated. So we see cybersecurity techniques that are being used by attacker in order basically to evade detection. And then what happens once the campaigns go live, there are quality issues. And unfortunately, we see it across the border, both with the small as well as the big player. And the trend is actually, we see more and more issue like that. And again, there is a huge spectrum of fraud that can happen. We mentioned some of them, we mentioned, misleading content and fraud and different infringement issues and different financial scam and so on. And this is just very tempting for bad guys to use this mechanism of native ad in order to lure the user into the scam. So unfortunately, yes, it happened across the board.
Thank you so much, Amnon, and thank you so much, Alon, and thank you for the wonderful attendees that joined us today. I hope we all learned something new about ad quality in the content recommendation area. Goodbye and thank you.
Thank you, Michal. Thank you, Alon.